Hey guys, tonight, we slip into straw sandals and wander quietly down a fog-draped path beneath a sky still clinging to stars. We're heading to a salt-kissed village on the coast of Edo period Japan, where the waves haven't changed their rhythm in centuries and the only alarm clock is the whisper of wind against wooden shutters. The huts are small, thatched roofs, seaweed-strung beams. Inside, everything smells faintly of smoke and old rice. You're lying on a futon that's just slightly too thin. And someone, maybe your uncle, maybe just a very loud neighbor, is already moving. You hear the clink of wooden ladles, the gentle cough of someone rising from sleep, a muted rustle as clothes are pulled on. And then that unmistakable sound, a bamboo bell tapping once against a post. It doesn't ring, it nudges. That's your cue. You sit up. The air is cold. The tatami mat stings your knees. You dress quickly, a faded indigo jacket, loose trousers tied with a rope belt, and your own set of straw sandals that are fraying more than you admit. The cloth pouch you tuck into your waist contains a rice ball and a dried plum breakfast, maybe lunch, if things go poorly. You step outside. The village is hushed, but not still. Shadows move like brush strokes along narrow paths. Smoke threads upward from a few early fires. There's a sound in the distance waves, pulling at the shore with the persistence of someone gently tugging at your sleeve. You follow it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You reach the beach where a row of wooden boats rests on their sides like sleeping animals. Nets are piled nearby in woven baskets. A cat trots across the sand, pauses near your feet, then disappears into the reeds like it has important business with the sea. Someone grunts behind you. It's your fishing partner, older, grumpier, but still moving like someone who's done this more times than you've had hot meals. He hands you a bundle rope, tools, a folded cloth soaked in yesterday's salt. You nod without speaking. You both understand the rhythm. It begins with silence. Mainstream historical fact during the Edo period, 1603-1868. Japan's fishing communities operated with a disciplined, almost ritualistic approach to daily life. Rising before dawn was essential, as most fish were active in the early morning, and villages relied on coordinated departures to avoid overcrowding favored fishing grounds. You pull the boat closer to the tide with a wooden lever, shoulders tight, breath short. It scrapes and bumps. The ocean, meanwhile, waits with patient indifference. You pause just before launching. Look up. There's a star still holding on in the east. Maybe it's the one your grandfather used to point at when he said, "If that one blinks, go back to bed." You watch it flicker once, twice. Doesn't blink. Guess you're going. Now you grip the oars. One deep breath, one shove. The boat slides into the water like a sigh. You both climb in, shifting weight, adjusting balance with the ease of long practice. And soon the shore drifts behind you, replaced by rolling dark water that mirrors the sky in waves. The sea at this hour is a mystery, not angry, not gentle, just awake. A bit like you. Your hands are already raw. Your nose drips. Your partner mutters something about a ghost he saw on the beach last week. You roll your eyes. He says it was the spirit of a drowned eel fisherman who never caught anything because he cursed too much. You vow to keep your swearing internal today. Fringe tidbit: many Edo period fishing villages pass down folklore. Warning of sea ghosts, often believed to be drowned souls jealous of the living. Fishermen left small offerings like rice or sake at the shoreline just in case. Whether for spirits or for luck, no one ever forgot. Your boat rocks slightly. A gull passes overhead, and you wonder briefly what it would be like to fly over this instead of row through it. You grip the oar tighter and push forward into open water. Somewhere behind you, the rest of the village begins to stir. Fires light in the kitchens, children blink into the morning. But here in this narrow boat, with your knees braced against wood and the air thick with salt and silence, you're already far away. This is the quiet part of the day. No shouts, no sails, no bargaining or mending. Just the hush of water, the creak of rope, and your breath misting in front of you. You know the tide will change soon. You know the fish will come or they won't. And you know you'll do this again tomorrow. But for now, your world is this sea star's oars and the quiet rhythm of starting a day before the rest of the world remembers it exists. The oar slides again through the water, and your hands already know what to do, how to pull, twist slightly, brace your feet. You don't need to think. You just listen, because the water speaks. And what it's saying right now is, pay attention. You look to the horizon, still mostly black but thinning. That pale, ink-washed gray bleeding in from the east, it means the sun is on its way. And with it wind, and maybe change. Your fishing partner squints toward a line of clouds so thin they look like brushstrokes. He grunts. Too high, he says. Wind before lunch. You nod like you understand. You sort of do. Because here reading the weather isn't something fancy. It's survival. You don't wait for forecasts. You read the sky like your life depends on it, because it does. Mainstream historical fact. Edo period fishermen were known for their extraordinary knowledge of local weather patterns, often passed orally through generations. Since Japan is an island nation battered by typhoons and sudden squalls, recognizing early signs in the clouds or wave patterns could mean the difference between a good catch and a watery grave. There's a type of cloud they say you should never see low flat and fast moving. When that cloud shows up, old fishermen say the sea forgets your name. That cloud's not here. Yet. Still the air tastes sharp. Damp with just a touch of iron. Your lips chap instantly. You pull your jacket tighter and glance over the side of the boat where reflections wobble and stretch like the sea's been drinking. There's a rhythm to this part of the morning. A strange ballet between paranoia and peace. Every little change in the breeze is a potential disaster, but also just weather. You scan the sea, you scan the sky, and you listen. For gulls mostly. Because if they're screaming, something might be wrong. Or right. It depends on the kind of scream. One means squid, another means storm. You think you hear the squid scream. You hope you're right. But your partner points instead to the water's surface. See that he says it without saying it. Just a nod, a twitch of the chin. You lean over. The water's darker there. Not black, but greenish roiling slightly beneath. You know what it is. A current shift. Maybe even a warm pocket that'll draw in fish. You mark the spot with your eyes. You'll return later. Right now, it's time for the real ritual, the weather watching. Because it's not just clouds and wind, it's everything. You glance behind you toward the coast, still barely visible, but the lanterns in the village have started to wink out. You can just make out the shrine above the dunes, its gate like a watchful brow. There's a flutter in your chest, not fear exactly, not joy either. Just the awareness that today could be anything. Fringe tidbit. Some fishermen in Edo, Japan carried tiny weather amulets, paper talismans from local shrines that were believed to calm the waves or summon the tide. They weren't exactly insurance, but they made you feel a little less alone out here. You pat your pocket. Yours is still there. Folded tight, slightly damp. ink smudged from fingers and years. But it's there. You feel better knowing that. Historians still argue whether these talismans were taken seriously as spiritual protection or simply as social obligations, much like hanging up a lucky charm, not because you believe in luck, but because your grandmother would haunt your dreams if you didn't. You pull in your oar for a moment. The boat drifts. You raise your hand palm, facing the breeze. It comes from the southeast, not strong, not yet. But it's cooler now than it was a minute ago. That could mean crosswinds, which could mean don't talk yourself into bad luck, your partner says, as if reading your thoughts. He spits into the sea. You do the same, just in case. You resume rowing, not fast, just steady. Every pull draws the boat into deeper water where the stakes grow larger and the sky opens wider. You pass a floating lantern. It bobs once, twice, then disappears behind a ripple. Someone must have let it go last night. A prayer for a lost father. A thank you for a saved son. Or maybe just a birthday wish whispered into wax and flame. You row past it like it's a secret not meant for you. The clouds shift again. You watch them flatten slightly. The wind picks up, and now you know. Today's going to be one of those days. Not dangerous, not blessed, just complicated. The kind where you'll need to adjust the net halfway through the throw. Where fish will come, but not the ones you wanted. Where something will break and someone will curse, and the sea will act like none of it matters. Because to the sea, none of it does. But to you, everything matters. Every knot, every cloud, every single choice about when to row, when to stop, when to throw the net, and when to go home. You glance at the horizon again. It's pink now. The sun just starting to smear color into the corners of the sky. You squint. The sea responds in kind, tossing back shimmer and shadow. You pause just long enough to take in that shimmer. It won't last. It never does. But it's yours for now. You adjust your grip and row forward into the rising light. The boat rocks in quiet satisfaction, like it too is relieved you finally caught something. The net drips as it comes up, ropes, creaking water, falling in silver curtains. Your arms ache, but it's the good kind of ache. The kind that says, yes, we're working. Yes, this is what the body is made for. Inside the net, a modest shimmer sardines. Maybe a few mackerel if the tides were feeling generous. Not a bounty, but not shameful either. You exchange a look with your partner. He shrugs the universal signal for could be worse. You tip the fish into a low wooden bin at your feet, careful to spread them evenly so they don't suffocate each other. One flips dramatically, splashing you with a final protest before settling. And then it's time to set the net again. But not before you go through another ritual. You untie your obi sash, unwrap a small cloth from beneath your tunic, and gently roll up the sleeves of your kosodi. Then you lean over and wash your hands in the sea. Not because they're dirty, but because that's what you do. Mainstream historical fact, cleanliness, especially symbolic cleansing with water, was deeply embedded in Japanese culture even during the Edo period. While often rooted in Shinto beliefs about purity and the spiritual power of water, it also served a practical purpose in a lifestyle closely tied to nature and death. You take a moment now, not long, just a breath, to look down at your reflection in the water. It's blurred by ripples, but you can still make out your face. Weathered, salt-touched, a little older than you feel, a little younger than the aches in your knees suggest. You splash your face next. The cold shocks you, makes you blink hard. But it's not unpleasant. It feels like a start. A second beginning, mid-morning. Then comes the barefoot part. Because when you're handling nets, you want to feel the tension through your feet. Straw sandals get wet, get slick, get in the way. So you kick them off, push them aside, and plant your toes against the wooden floor of the boat. It's rough, salt-warped, alive. You can feel the pulse of the ocean in the wood, or maybe it's just your heartbeat thudding harder than usual. Either way, it connects you. You glance over at your partner. He's already barefoot. Of course, show off. And then there's the discipline. Not the self-punishing kind, not today at least. More the discipline of routine, of knowing that this is not the moment to daydream about the girl who waved at you by the fish-drying racks last week, or the time to fantasize about owning your own boat and naming it something ridiculous like Wave Emperor. It's time to focus. The net must go out just right. You coil the rope again, this time slower, more deliberate. The sun's starting to show itself now, a low golden blur cresting over the hills behind you. The sea sparkles with the kind of smugness only nature can get away with. You squint. Your partner adjusts the rudder. Then again, you cast. And as the net fans out, curling in the air like a dancer's ribbon, you think maybe this is enough. This moment, this throw, this breath. Fringe tidbits, some fishing villages believed in casting whispers, short, breathy phrases uttered as the net was thrown. These weren't prayers in the traditional sense, but more like little agreements with the sea, promises, bargains, polite requests. A few communities even developed their own local dialects just for these ocean-bound murmurs. You whisper something now. You're not even sure what. Something about strength, or breakfast, or just, please. The net lands with a soft slap. A few gulls caw in approval. And now you wait. You take a moment to glance around sky-brightening horizon, stretching forever. The kind of scene painters spend years trying to capture, and still somehow get wrong. And just like that, the ache starts again. In your shoulders, in your fingers, in your gut. Because you've been up since long before the sun, and because you haven't eaten yet. Historians still argue whether fishermen typically paused for breakfast or waited until after their first haul. Some accounts describe families sending rice balls out in bamboo containers by small courier boats, while others suggest the fishermen themselves refused to eat until a catch had been confirmed, part superstition, part survival instinct. You reach down into your pouch and pull out the rice ball. It's warm from your body heat and still slightly sticky. You chew slowly, each bite a soft reward. Your partner munches his loudly. He's less poetic about it. No one talks. Not because of some unspoken rule, but because the ocean doesn't like loud mouths this early. And because there's comfort in the sound of chewing the rhythm of waves, the gulls shrieking as if they've seen a ghost eel again. You finish your rice, you lick your fingers, and you go back to the net, because it's not going to pull itself. And the sea always wants proof you're paying attention. The net groans as you tug it in water, spilling from its belly in long streaks that slap the side of the boat. Your hands grip harder this time. The rope bites a little deeper. You know this weight. This isn't just sardines. This is something heavier. Something worth hauling with your knees too. Your partner leans in, lips pressed together, eyebrows, doing that very specific thing they do when he's not going to say, "I told you this was the spot," but is absolutely thinking it. The net crests. And there they are. Mackerel, fat, flickering silver torpedoes thrashing in the weave like tiny wet warriors. One manages to vault itself up in a last-ditch escape attempt, flapping across the boat until your partner snatches it midair with all the elegance of a bored samurai catching a falling leaf. He doesn't even smile. Show off. You help empty the catch into the boat's shallow wooden hold, careful to spread the fish in a single layer so they stay fresh and don't squish the life, or what remains of it, out of each other. They flop a bit. The smell rises, sharp, rich, unmistakably this life. The mist begins to lift now, chased off by sunlight that hits the water like gold dust. You row further out toward the deeper blue line, where currents swirl stronger. The air feels clearer here, cooler, hungrier. This you think is where the best fish hide. Not because it's true, but because you have to believe it. The oars creak in rhythm. You and your partner don't need to talk. Every inch of movement, the lean of your bodies, the pause before a pivot. The subtle lift of one arm communicates more than words. It's a duet of survival, set to the tempo of water and breath. Mainstream historical fact: Edo period fishing boats were primarily powered by oar or sail, depending on the region. Most small coastal craft, like the ones in this scene, were rowed by hand, often by two men in quiet coordination to allow for stealth near fish schools and shallows. You pass a jellyfish bloom glowing ghosts, pulsing just beneath the surface. You don't mention it. It's better not to. There's an old superstition about jellyfish this early in the season, something about bad luck or weak tides. Or maybe it was just that one guy who got stung in the eye and wouldn't shut up about it for a month. Either way, you keep rowing. Then you reach a quiet patch of water. The boat stills and the silence thickens. Here you can hear everything. The splash of distant fish, the hiss of the breeze curling through the reeds on shore. Even your own thoughts, slow sea-soaked things that ebb and flow like tide pools full of memories. You think about your father, about how he used to sit in this same spot. Same boat, maybe. Same quiet hope in his eyes. You wonder if he ever got tired of it. If he ever dreamed of running off to Edo City, selling roasted fish skewers on some loud street corner, far away from the weight of nets and superstition. Fringe tidbit: some young fishermen did run off to Edo or Osaka, where they found work in riverside food stalls, selling grilled eel or salt-fried fish. While rare stories of these sea runaways circulated in taverns like urban legends, often ending in either fortune or humiliation, depending on who told it. You don't say any of this out loud. You just cast the net again. This time the throw is perfect. Smooth arc, clean release. It lands on the water with a sigh, like it belongs there. Your partner nods once. That's high praise. You both sit waiting. The sun's up now, full and yellow and smug about it. It casts long reflections across the waves, which gently rock the boat like a cradle. For a moment, you feel like you could sleep, right there, head against the oars, drifting out with the tide toward whatever comes next. But the net moves. Barely. Just enough. You brace, lean, haul. And again, the net rises. This time it's not fish. Not just fish, anyway. Wrapped in the net's folds is a small wooden charm, weathered tied with reed string and shaped like a fox. You blink. So does your partner. Well, not literally. That'd be creepy. Historians still argue whether fishermen deliberately tossed charms into the water for good luck, or whether such objects were accidental offerings from passing travelers and pilgrims. Some believe they marked old shrines now sunken beneath rising tides. You don't know what to make of it, but you don't toss it back. You place it gently in your pouch beside your second rice ball. Your partner mutters something about leaving offerings tonight, just in case. You nod. He's not wrong. The net goes back out again, but this time your heart's not in it. You keep thinking about the fox charm, and about what else might be just below the surface. You row to another spot, another throw, another silence. But now the water feels different, like it's watching. You tell yourself that's just the sunburn talking, or maybe the jellyfish. Either way, you row a little faster this time. You shift your weight slightly as the boat drifts into calmer waters, and the sea cradles you like a tired uncle pretending not to nap. The sun has climbed higher now, its warmth starting to press through your robe like a heavy hand on your back. The chill from earlier is gone, replaced by a drowsy heat that makes you consider just for a second lying flat in the boat and pretending you've fallen overboard. But your partner would never let you live it down. Instead, you lean forward and start preparing the tools again. Because tools are everything. And in this world, they're not just objects, they're family. Heirlooms, conversation starters. Pain in the butt, mostly, but loved. First, the net. Handmade from hemp, knotted so precisely it would make a sailor blush. Each square is the result of hours of work. Hours you'll never get back. And yet, if one knot slips, the whole thing unravels. Kind of like life. Or your cousin's last marriage. Mainstream historical fact. Japanese fishermen during the Edo period used a variety of tools, nets, lines, traps, all handcrafted and maintained with great care. Net making was a skill passed through generations, and a torn net was often repaired the same day, sometimes even during the fishing trip itself. You pull out your hook and line set next. It's modest, just a few bone hooks polished smooth and tied to braided cord. Your grandfather carved the bone, or at least that's what the family story insists. Might have been your grandmother. She had more patience. You test the hook against your thumb, not enough to prick, just enough to respect. Some say it's bad luck to touch the hook tip before it touches water. Others say if you don't touch it, the fish will think you're a coward. You personally just like the way it feels cool, clean ready. Fringe tidbit. Some Edo period fishermen whispered short poems to their tools while working tiny haiku or personal chants, believed to wake up the spirit inside the object. One documented example involved a net being called "My Spider of the Sea." You whisper now mostly out of habit. My hook is small but mighty, like my patience. Your partner raises an eyebrow, doesn't comment. He knows better. You toss the line. It cuts the surface cleanly with a kind of grace you'd never manage on dry land. The boat steadies. You settle in hand on the rope, waiting for the first tug. The tools may be ready, but it's the sea that gets the final vote. You feel the rope go taut. Not a big pull, just a nibble. A test. You stay still the way a cat does before pouncing. Except you're not a cat. You're an underpaid, oversalted fisherman hoping for a decent lunch. The line jerks again. You pull and haul in a small snapper, glossy and red, squirming with more attitude than size. It's not huge, but it's respectable. You add it to the bin and rebait the hook. This is how the next hour goes, tools in handline in water rhythm, slow and steady. It's not glamorous. It's not heroic. It's not going to make you famous. But it works. Historians still argue whether small boat fishermen relied more on netting or hook and line techniques. Evidence varies by region. Some coastal villages favored seining nets for sardines, while others specialized in deep water line fishing, especially during seasonal migrations. The truth is probably that they used both, just like you do. The sun climbs higher. Your back starts to complain. The bucket of fish begins to look less like dinner and more like value. But it's the quiet that gets you. The strange, enormous quiet. Out here, the world narrows. There's no news, no neighbor gossip, no surprise tax collectors. Just sea and sky and the occasional gull that looks like it wants your rice ball. And in that quiet, your tools become something more than practical. They're companions. They're legacy. They're the reason you'll have something to hand down, if not to a child, then to a nephew or a neighbor or just to the wind. You glance at your knife next. Not to use it, just to make sure it's still there. It's tucked under the seat, wrapped in cloth, polished so many times you could check your teeth in the blade if you had time to care. The knife's name is Whisper. Because once when you were very young, your father leaned close during a storm and said, "A good knife doesn't shout, it whispers," and still gets the job done. You believed him? Still do. Even now when your fingers ache, your shoulders burn, and your knees might file for separation, you still reach for that knife when it's time to clean the catch. Because that's the next part. Soon you'll head back toward shore, and there, under the crooked thatched roof of the old storage shed, you'll gut and scale what you've caught. You'll use your tools like extensions of your own arms, barely thinking, only doing. And later, you'll sharpen them, slowly, carefully, with the same whetstone you've used for years, because tools last, if you take care of them. And in a life where so little is certain, not the sea, not the sky, not even tomorrow's tide, that one promise means everything. The sky is wide open now, no longer soft with mist, but bold with midday clarity. A few clouds linger like lazy dogs, refusing to move from the shade. You sit low in the boat, squinting toward the shimmering edge of the bay, knowing that soon it'll be time to turn back in. But not just yet. Not until you've tried one more throw. The net waits beside you, coiled like a sleeping snake. You run your fingers over the hemp, checking it one last time. It's a simple thing, a tool without pride, but it holds the day's fortune in its weave. And so you rise. Your back complains, your thighs creak, your knees mutter rude things about your choices in life. But you rise, and with one deep breath, you throw. The net fans out in the air a perfect spread. It slaps the water flat and disappears just beneath the surface, quiet as breath. Now you wait, and hope, and listen. Your partner taps a rhythm on the boat's side. 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks, pause, 1 long drag of his palm across the wood. He's done this since you were kids. Says it makes the fish curious. You've never decided whether he's insane or a genius. Probably both. Mainstream historical fact, Edo period fishermen developed their own rhythms and routines when casting nets, sometimes including humming, drumming, or synchronized movements. While rarely documented in official records, these micro-traditions formed the backbone of communal fishing culture and were passed down more strictly than written rules. You can feel the net pulling, just slightly. The surface doesn't show it, but you can sense it in your fingers, in the twitch of the rope, in the way the water suddenly seems to breathe back at you. You haul, slowly, deliberately. And there it is, a flash of silver, a slap of water, and then the net breaks the surface in a riot of thrashing bodies, mostly sardines, glinting like wet coins. Dozens of them, maybe more. You and your partner move quickly, hands flying, working together like one creature with 4 limbs and a shared mind. The boat rocks hard. One fish flings itself over the edge and back into the sea. Another bounces into your lap and stares up at you like it has questions. You toss it in the bin before it gets too philosophical. Fringe tidbit. Some fishermen believed fish could hold grudges. If you caught one and let it go, it would tell the others, and your next trip would be cursed. Whether this was superstition or sleep-deprived logic is still up for debate. You take a moment to breathe. The catch is decent enough to justify the hours spent, the blisters, the weird pain behind your shoulder blade that only arrives when you're doing something productive. You look at your partner. He nods. You both know what that means. It's time. Not the dramatic return home with glory kind of time. The let's haul our half-sunken selves back before the tide turns kind. You settle into your seat, grip the oar, and begin to row. The boat is heavier now, every pull of the paddle dragging more than just wood and water. It drags salt and sweat and a deep exhaustion that's not entirely physical. The coastline gets closer with each pull. The breeze shifts now, carrying the smell of pine trees from the shore, mingling with the briny scent of the sea. Your arms burn, but there's something oddly satisfying about it. Like you've earned this ache. Historians still argue whether fishermen of the Edo period maintained strict personal schedules or simply followed the rhythms of tides and fish behavior. Some sources suggest a near monk-like devotion to regularity, while others hint at more intuitive, responsive daily routines shaped by instinct and environmental shifts. You'd argue it's both. There's no point trying to control the sea, but you can be ready for it. You pass another boat, a younger crew shouting and laughing like they've just invented fishing. You remember being that loud, that smug. Your partner grunts. You grin. Back on shore, the village starts to take shape again. Low houses with thatched roofs, a few figures moving slowly like shadows across the beach. You spot your aunt hunched over her fish drying racks, arranging mackerel fillets like sacred relics. She's been doing that since before you had teeth. You wave. She doesn't look up. Classic. You reach the dock. It's nothing fancy, just a few planks nailed together, warped with salt and time, but solid enough. You step out of the boat carefully, trying not to tip everything into the sea. Your knees wobble. Your feet slip. Your partner smirks. You make it. Barely. Then you unload the fish. Bin by bin, basket by basket. You carry them up the dock to the old weighing post. You can already feel the day pulling at your spine, but there's more to do. Always more. And before the day is done, you'll cast again. Maybe not today. Maybe not even tomorrow. But soon. Because that's what you do. You cast. You wait. You pull. And you hope. The dock creaks beneath your feet as you step back from the weighing post, wiping your hands on the side of your robe. They still smell like fish, like rope, like the sort of hard work no bath can scrub out completely. Not that you'll be getting a bath anytime soon. Maybe if it rains. Your partner has already plopped down on an upturned bucket, chewing on something that may once have been a rice cake. He gestures vaguely toward the sea, which is now gleaming like a spilled mirror under the high sun. But you're not looking at the sea anymore. You're listening. Out here, the sea is only half the conversation. The other half, the silence between men. And sometimes the sound of someone softly humming to the waves like they're whispering secrets. Mainstream historical fact. Many Edo period fishermen believed in communicating with the ocean, not just physically, but spiritually. Quiet chants or murmured mantras were common, especially when alone meant to calm the sea or attract good fortune. You find yourself humming now, low and tuneless. Not a song, really. Just a sound your father used to make when he was fixing nets like a lullaby for tired fingers. You never asked what it meant. You're not sure he knew either. Your partner joins in after a moment completely off-key. You resist the urge to tell him he's scaring the fish spirits. Instead, you both stare at the boat bobbing just offshore. It's half empty now. Not bad for a morning, not great either. Enough for trade, enough for home, maybe even a bit of dried stock for later. But nothing flashy. Nothing you'll be bragging about at the next market day. You squat by the dock and check the smaller basket, what you jokingly call your bonus round. Sometimes it holds a crab or two. Occasionally, a weird-looking squid that stares at you like it knows your secrets. Today, a single flounder, flat and smug, blinking one eye as if to say, "I dare you to cook me properly." You flick it. It doesn't flinch. Fringe tidbit. In some parts of Japan, fishermen believed certain fish, especially bottom dwellers like flounder, could see through lies. Children were told not to look them in the eye if they were hiding something. You place it gently into the bin and turn back toward shore, following the crunch of sand and crushed shells as your partner drags a drying mat closer to the sunniest patch of earth. He always picks the best spot. You suspect he has a pact with the weather. Historians still argue whether the songs and murmurs of fishermen were purely functional, used for timing and coordination, or if they held deeper ritualistic significance. Some believe they were connected to Shinto or animist traditions, while others think they were just the sleepy tunes of men who had too much salt in their ears. You think probably both. Because when your life is ruled by something as unpredictable as the sea, you make rituals out of anything that brings order. A chant, a habit, even a joke. You glance down the beach. A group of younger boys are throwing stones into the water, arguing about who can skip the most. One of them's using oyster shells, which is definitely cheating, but you let it slide. They'll learn soon enough that the sea doesn't care how well you throw. It only cares what you're willing to wait for. Your partner stands now brushing sand off his back like he just fought a bear. He grunts at you some universal gesture that means, let's get on with it, and you both head toward the shade of the fish shed. It's not glamorous, the shed. Just wooden slats and rope and a roof that leaks in 2 places. But it smells like home, like dried seaweed and old salt, and the smoke of cooking fires from years past. Inside, you sit cross-legged, laying out a few of the fish on a chopping board that's seen better decades. Your knife whisper slides from your belt like it's been waiting. You don't speak. You don't need to. The cleaning begins. One fish, then the next. Slice, pull, rinse. You let your mind drift not away, but inward. This is the part where you remember things you haven't thought about in years. The way your sister used to sing while gutting mackerel. The time your uncle dropped a whole basket of eels and cried like someone stole his sandals. You even remember the story of the old man who once caught a fish with writing on its scales. No one ever proved it, but that didn't stop him from telling the tale to every single traveler who passed through. Fringe stories like that are part of the landscape almost as much as the tide. Maybe not true, but true enough for a community that measures truth in stories, not scrolls. The fish are done. You stand stretch and tie the cleaned catch into bundles. Some will be dried, some sold. A few kept for dinner if your aunt hasn't already decided she's cooking something better, which usually means fermented radish and a scowl. You and your partner carry the bundles to the racks near the smoke pit, and as you set them down, you pause. Look at the sea again. It's quiet now. Really quiet. Not the kind of quiet that means peace. The kind that means the sea is thinking, and maybe watching. So you hum again, just in case. Your stomach grumbles. Not politely, not subtly. The kind of grumble that sounds like a sea beast just woke up inside you and is mildly annoyed there's no pickled turnip in sight. You glance at your partner. He doesn't even pretend to be surprised. His hand's already reaching into the woven cloth bundle he stashed behind the dock post hours ago. Lunch, if you can call it that, is as humble as the tide. A ball of rice, a slice of salted daikon. Maybe if the gods are smiling or your aunt was in a good mood, a bit of dried bonito tucked in like a secret. You settle onto the shaded edge of the fish shed legs, stretched feet bare. The rice is cold. The daikon crunches like sun-warmed bone. But it's food. It's yours. And it tastes exactly how a fisherman's meal should earned. Mainstream historical fact, Edo period fishermen often carried simple lunches prepared by family or themselves before setting out. On longer ventures, preserved foods, dried fish, pickled vegetables, hardened rice, balls were staples due to their resistance to spoilage in the coastal heat. Your partner devours his meal in 5 bites flat, then leans back with a theatrical sigh as if he's just survived a feast at a daimyo's banquet. You chuckle and toss him a withered plum from your pouch. He inspects it like it's an artifact, then shrugs and eats it anyway. You both sit in companionable silence, staring out toward the tide as it tugs gently at the sand, like a child trying to sneak away a toy. The sun above is directly overhead now. Its rays poke through the thatched edge of the roof, casting lazy patterns across your chest. You consider napping. Seriously consider it. You've certainly earned it. But then comes the sound. Footsteps. Small ones. Fast. You look up and see one of the village boys sprinting towards you with the kind of panic usually reserved for fire flood or stolen snacks. He skids to a halt, kicking up a cloud of sand that absolutely ruins the vibe. Your wife says, "Come now," he pants wide-eyed. She says it's important. You blink, then sigh, then stand. It's never good when she says it's important. It usually means either your mother-in-law's coming over or someone's broken the fish rack again. Last time it was both. You sling the fish basket over your shoulder and start the walk up the ridge path, where the breeze gets caught between the rice paddies and the drying sheds, like gossip between old neighbors. Your partner doesn't follow. He knows better than to get involved in domestic side quests. The house is small but tidy. You built it with your uncle's help during a summer so humid the walls practically sweated. The front step creaks in welcome as you arrive, only to be met by your daughter. Cheeks puffed out, hands on hips, holding what appears to be a fish head. No. It's worse. It's the wrong fish head. "This is not a cooking fish," she says, scandalized. You inspect it. It's definitely not. It's a tiny reef fish caught by mistake and somehow survived the morning shuffle. You smuggle a wink to her and toss the head into the compost pile. Disaster for now averted. Fringe tidbit. Some Edo coastal families believe that feeding the wrong fish to house spirits could cause illness or bad luck. Fish with unusual eyes or crooked mouths were especially feared, and children were taught to watch for these traits during meal prep. You finally sit down. Inside, the air is cooler. Your wife passes you a cup of barley tea without words, just a look. One of those looks that says, "Next time label the fish properly or you're sleeping with the sardines." Historians still argue whether Edo fishing families maintained strict hierarchies inside the home. Some accounts suggest the wives of fishermen held significant authority in managing dried goods and market logistics, while others downplay their roles in historical records. Either way, you're pretty sure your wife runs the entire household by sheer willpower. Your daughter has already forgotten the fish scandal. She's now building a tower out of discarded clamshells, humming to herself. You watch her for a moment, feeling the fatigue soften. Outside, the sun begins its long, slow lean toward the western ridge. Your wife stands. "Take the salted ones to Aunt Hannah before dusk," she said. You nod. That's the deal. You fish. She runs everything else. Sometimes it feels unfair. Most times you feel grateful you married someone who could wrestle a tuna and win an argument in the same breath. You grab the bamboo tray of salted mackerel and head toward the back path that curves along the shoreline. The afternoon light slants low and the sand warms your toes. There's something about this hour, quiet, golden, expectant, that feels like it belongs to fishermen alone. You pass two elders playing Go under a cypress tree. One of them is asleep, his hand hovering mid-move. You nod. He snores. The beach is nearly empty now. The boats have been pulled up. The nets hang like ghosts from their drying poles. The scent of grilled fish drifts faintly on the breeze, along with the distant chime of a wind bell. You arrive at Aunt Hannah's, just as the shadows stretch long enough to touch her porch. She welcomes you with a nod, takes the tray, and gives you a slice of sweet potato cake that tastes like heaven, if heaven were slightly burnt and served with judgment. You sit on her step, finishing it slowly. Then, as the tide begins to whisper again in the distance, you smile. Because lunch may be long gone, but this is the flavor of a fisherman's life. By the time you make it back to the dock, the beach has shifted moods again. Morning bustle is a memory. The midday lull has passed. Now comes the late afternoon trade, a sort of sleepy chaos. Everyone moves slower, but with purpose, like ants that have had just enough sake to get philosophical. The fish you hauled in this morning have already changed hands. Some went to the drying racks, others to Aunt Hani, and the best of the bunch reserved for the merchants now arriving with their empty baskets and full opinions. Mainstream historical fact. In Edo period coastal villages, local fish markets weren't massive events like those in the city. Instead, small clusters of trade took place dockside. Fishermen bartered with traveling vendors, regional cooks, or sometimes directly with priests from local temples. You step back into the rhythm with barely a thought. One merchant, Noboru, the tall one with the eyebrows that look like startled caterpillars, waves you over. He's eyeing the bin your partner just set down, pretending like he hasn't already inspected it 3 times. You squat beside him, poke at a still glinting sardine, and shrug. Not bad for a day where the tide forgot how to be useful, you say. He grins. Not good for a day when I'm the one paying. Classic Noboru. You go through the motions, a little banter, a little fake disappointment, the shared ritual of downplaying your goods, so neither of you gets too emotional when the price drops a few mon. It's all theater, really. Everyone knows what the fish are worth. But the dance. The dance is sacred. Your partner joins in with a totally unnecessary story about how one of the fish in the bin leapt into the boat to avoid a storm. Noboru raises an eyebrow. You both nod solemnly, as if it's the most believable thing in the world. Fringe tidbit. Some Edo fishermen believed certain fish voluntarily surrendered themselves to worthy nets. Catching one without a fight could be seen as a sign of personal luck or divine favor, especially during religious festivals. You manage to offload most of the catch. A few of the smaller bins go to other merchants who barely glance your way, except to ask if the sardines are fresh enough to still swim if bribed. You roll your eyes and keep counting coins. Barter done, you gather the ropes and crates with your partner, dragging them toward the boat shed. The sun's already leaning westward, the color of everything starting to tilt toward gold. Shadows stretch like lazy cats across the sand. You pass your neighbor Hachiro, who's squatting with a knife and a suspiciously round pufferfish. You don't ask. He doesn't offer. Historians still argue whether fish sellers in Edo villages had designated guilds or looser market rules. Some believe coastal towns enforced strict pricing and trade hierarchies, while others point to the more fluid, relationship-driven barter systems that thrived in isolated communities. You personally think anyone trying to enforce rules on a bunch of half-sunburnt, underfed fishermen deserves whatever headache they get. Back at the shed, you and your partner begin the cleanup dance. Ropes get coiled. Nets are rinsed and strung up. The buckets get stacked. Whisper your knife gets washed, dried, and placed on its stone like it's going to give a speech later. You mop the shed floor, a combination of dried fish scales, seawater, and something you refuse to identify, and toss the rag into the deal with this later basket. The beach begins to empty. The sea's gone quiet again. No more shouting. Just the hush of waves flirting with the shore and the occasional call of a gull that sounds like it's being overly dramatic on purpose. You stretch, crack your knuckles, and glance toward the village path. There's one last thing to do. You sling a small basket over your shoulder, this one filled with the leftover catch. The one's not pretty enough for Noboru. the ones too small to dry. The ones with character. You take the winding path toward the town's edge, past the moss-covered Torii gate, until you reach the thatched house with the garden full of cabbage and complaints. Grandmother's place. She's out front, squatting on a stool so low it barely counts as furniture, peeling garlic like it insulted her ancestors. She doesn't look up when you arrive. "Took you long enough," she mutters. "The fish are late." You bow. Deeply, with practiced humility. "They insisted on a scenic route," you say. She snorts. You hand her the basket. She inspects it like it's a box of secrets, then grunts approvingly and shuffles back inside. You follow her in and sit cross-legged near the fire pit. She pours you tea before you ask. You sip. It's bitter. It's perfect. Fringe detail. Many fishing villages had unofficial elders, usually women who managed community gossip, medicinal herbs, and generational wisdom. Their role wasn't always documented in formal records, but their authority in family and food traditions was often absolute. You spend a few minutes talking, well, listening mostly. Grandmother's voice is like warm gravel. She tells you about the weather, about a chicken that's been giving her attitude, and about the dream she had last night, where the sea turned into rice porridge and everyone drowned, but politely. You nod at all the right parts. When the tea's gone, she pats your knee once firmly like she's sealing a blessing into your leg and sends you on your way. Outside, the air smells like pine and salt. The sun is nearly down. You return to the dock just as the last of the boats are being tied for the night. The sky above is painted in those deep hues you only get after a long, honest day. Blue-purple, a streak of orange, like someone smeared a brush too low. You sit beside your partner again. Neither of you says anything. You don't need to. The dock creaks, the waves hush, and for a while you simply breathe. The nets are tired. You can tell just by looking at them the way they sag on the drying poles like elderly fishermen after a bottle of sake and a long story. Some of the cords have frayed others, torn clean through by stubborn fish or rocks pretending to be fish. Or maybe time did it. Time is the most patient enemy. You kneel down beside the net-racked toes, digging into cool sand, and begin the first of what will be 100 tiny repairs. Needle in hand, twine looped around your thumb, you find the rhythm again. Pull, knot, tighten, breathe. Mainstream historical fact. In the Edo period, net repair was a constant part of a fisherman's life. Nets were hand-woven from hemp or cotton and damaged often by sharp rocks, heavy fish, or strong currents. Men and women alike participated in their upkeep depending on the village customs. Your partner joins you a few minutes later, dramatically flopping beside you like a man who just lost a war. He has one job: entangle the pile of twisted netting that looks like a sea monster sneezed into a basket. You wish him luck? You really do. But not too much. He did claim credit for catching that flounder earlier. "Did I ever tell you about the eel that bit me through the boot?" he mutters, untangling a knot that seems sentient. "Yes," you reply. 3 times. And in one version, it was a ghost. "Well, I never said it wasn't a ghost." You smirk. The net stretches between you like a web of memory of all the mornings you hauled it in full and all the ones you didn't. It's as much your companion as any person in the village. Sometimes kinder. You pause, examine a loop, and snip away a frayed edge. From the corner of your eye, you spot a group of children running by with seashells in their arms. They're arguing about which one is lucky and whether lucky shells float or sink. You smile. You remember believing things like that. Fringe tidbit. Some coastal children in the Edo period believed that the shells which whispered loudest when held to the ear were blessed by sea spirits and could bring good dreams or nightmares if they were stolen from the tide. Your partner holds up a loop of netting twisted into something resembling a snail. Modern art, he offers. More like abstract failure, you reply. He tosses it toward the discard pile, and it lands on top of a bundle you should have burned last year. Maybe tomorrow. The sun begins to dip lower, casting long shadows that weave through the net like ink in paper. It feels quieter now, not because the world stopped talking, but because you finally settled into the rhythm of the evening. The kind that doesn't need noise to mean something. Your fingers ache, your knees protest, but the net is whole again. For now. You both sit back and admire the work. While your partner says, I think we've improved it by 6 fish. That's ambitious. I'm an optimist. Historians still argue whether net mending sessions were considered labor or social time. Some argue it was ritualistic work, tightly scheduled and communal. Others believe it was flexible, done when needed casually, and with conversation serving as the glue between the hands. You lean toward the latter, because how else do you explain the stories that live inside the knots, like the tale of the fisherman who claimed a kappa helped him fix his net during a storm, or the rumor that knots tied during a full moon never come undone? You don't believe everything, but you don't disbelieve either. That's just not wise when your life depends on rope and weather. You stand, stretch, and hang the last section of net on the drying pole. The wind catches it just right, turning the weave into a waving tapestry, your quiet flag of survival. From behind you, a voice calls out. Your uncle says the basket broke again. Of course it did. You and your partner exchange glances and begin the trek to the storage shed. The basket in question is an ancient, cranky cylinder woven from rice straw and betrayal. Every week it collapses under its own boredom, and every week your uncle pretends to be shocked. The repair takes less than 15 minutes. You reinforce the base with thicker rope, replace the cracked slat, and mutter a quiet curse to the gods of bad craftsmanship. Your uncle watches from a distance, sipping tea like he's doing something important. You return to the dock just as the first lanterns begin to glow. One of the village women walks past with a basket of dried kelp on her head, calling out the dinner hour. Smoke rises from cook fires in soft plumes. The air thickens with a scent of grilled mackerel, steamed rice, and miso. Your stomach stirs again, loudly, that your partner says is the smell of forgiveness. For whatever I did to deserve dried radish last night. You laugh and begin packing the tools. The net needles, the knives, the scraps of twine. All of it goes back into the wooden chest by the dock, your quiet treasury of survival. Nightfall begins to blur the shoreline. The tide has returned with slow intent, nudging driftwood and shells up the beach like it's setting the table for moonlight. You finish just as the final sliver of sun disappears behind the western ridge. The nets are mended. The basket probably won't fall apart again this week. And for a moment, everything feels handled, not perfect, never perfect, but enough. And enough out here is everything. The wind changes, not loudly, not suddenly. Just a subtle shift in direction that tugs at your sleeve and whispers across the tips of the bamboo poles. You know this breeze, it always carries the faintest tang of something older than fish or seaweed. Salt, yes, but also memory, reverence, something almost divine. It's time for the shrine. You walk barefoot as always. Boots have no business here. The path curves inland slightly before looping back toward a low hill crowned with weather-worn torii gates. No one's forced to come, but nearly everyone does. Not because they're superstitious, though many are, but because it feels necessary. Like brushing your teeth or making sure your net doesn't insult a spirit. Mainstream historical fact. Many Edo period fishing communities maintain small Shinto shrines devoted to sea deities like Ryujin, the dragon god of the sea, or Ebisu, the cheerful patron of fishermen. Offerings of rice, salt sake, and fish were made to ensure safety and bountiful catches. You reach the top of the path just as the sun's last light dips into the sea, igniting the waves with one final shimmer. The shrine is humble. A wooden box for offerings. A rope bell frayed and wrapped in prayers. A stone fox whose nose is chipped and eyes forever half closed. You bow once, clap twice, then bow again. It doesn't matter if your hands are rough or if your knees creak. The gods aren't picky. They just like being remembered. You pull out a tiny pouch of salt from your sleeve, wrapped in wax paper and tied with twine, and pour a bit into the stone basin beside the fox. It hisses quietly as the wind brushes past, like something invisible just took a deep breath. Your partner does the same, offering a dab of rice and a sliver of dried bonito. If this doesn't work, he mutters, "I'm sacrificing my uncle next time." You grin. The shrine isn't fancy, but it's steady. And in a life where boats sink nets, tear, and storms arrive like angry drunks, you cling to steady things. Fringe tidbit, some fishermen swore that if the shrine's fox statue smiled in morning light, casting just the right shadow, it meant the sea would offer up something unusual. One such tale claims a fisherman once caught a pearl the size of his fist the same day the fox grinned. You linger for a few moments, letting the silence wrap around you. Behind the shrine, a narrow path leads down toward the hidden cove, where kelp dries in long ribbons, and where your grandfather once said, "The sea whispers louder." You walk there slowly, following the thread of stillness. The cove is quiet. So quiet you can hear the pop of air bubbles beneath the surface. A single crane stands on a rock preening like it owns the coast. You don't disagree. You scoop a handful of seawater and splash it over your face. It's cold, bracing, cleansing. Historians still argue whether such acts were part of formal purification rituals or simple tradition passed through generations. The line between sacred and habitual is blurry when every day revolves around surviving an ocean that doesn't care if you're feeling spiritual. You stand dripping and walk back to the village with salt still clinging to your skin. As you pass the shrine again, you pause. Just for a moment. Long enough to whisper something soft. Not a prayer exactly. But not a prayer either. Back in the village, the lanterns are lit. Soft orange globes sway gently from beams and branches, casting puddles of light like scattered coins. You walk past the elderly man carving fish shapes into driftwood, the group of women gossiping quietly over weaving looms, and the child still arguing about lucky shells. Dinner waits at home. But first, the salt. You stop at the threshold and dip your fingers into the ceramic bowl near the door, sprinkling a bit over your shoulders before stepping inside. Just habit. Or protection. Or both. Your daughter runs up and grabs your hand, pulling you toward the table where steamed rice, grilled fish, and pickled greens wait in their usual comforting lineup. Your wife gives you a look. You nod. The shrine has been visited. The sea has been thanked. You are for now acceptable. You eat slowly, savoring each bite. It's not a feast, it never is. But it's warm and everyone's here, and you're not currently being yelled at about mislabeled fish. So it counts as perfect. Later, when the dishes are washed and your daughter is half asleep against her mother's shoulder, you step outside. The stars have finally emerged, countless pinpricks of light scattered like spilled rice across the black bowl of the sky. The moon is low, full-bellied and smug. You walk down to the dock again because you can't help yourself. It's your second home. Maybe your first. The boats are still. The water reflects the sky so clearly, you wonder if it's the real thing, and the stars above are just copies. You sit on the edge legs dangling and watch the tide shift in slow, thoughtful motions. Somewhere a wind chime sings. Somewhere a frog answers. And somewhere deeper past the reach of lanterns or prayer, the sea listens. You don't speak. Not yet. You let the salt do the talking. Morning was about catching. Midday was about mending. Evening this time now, as twilight folds itself neatly over rooftops, is for keeping, for preserving, for ensuring the sea's generosity isn't wasted when the sun forgets to shine or when the tides forget their manners. You head toward the smokehouse. Behind nearly every home in the fishing village stands a small structure, 3 walls, slatted roof, and a constant perfume of salt firewood and fish oils. It's here that your wife and daughter have already begun the quiet ballet of preservation. Mainstream historical fact. In Edo period Japan, preservation was a crucial part of daily life for fishing families. Methods included salting, sun-drying haimono pickling in vinegar or sake lees, and smoking over low fires. These practices not only provided food security, but were often ritualized, passed down through generations. You slide open the screen door and are immediately wrapped in a warm haze of smoke and cedar. Fish hang on bamboo rods overhead, sardines, mackerel, and a few lucky squids dripping gently into a tray of ash below. The air hums with quiet crackles. Your wife turns face slightly smudged with ash hair, tied back sleeves rolled up. Well, she says, not looking at you, but very much addressing you. Your morning catch didn't embarrass us today. A high compliment. Your daughter grins from the corner where she's stringing tiny fish on twine like jewelry for some underwater empress. You sit beside her hands, outstretched to help. Together, the 3 of you move with the ease of those who've done this 100 times. And will do it 100 more. Gut. Rinse. Salt. Hang. Repeat. The fish are light in your hands, cool, slick, and already stiffening slightly in the smoke-laced air. You work in silence, but not in quiet. The fire speaks in its own language, soft pops, lazy hisses, and the occasional dramatic snap, like it just remembered something traumatic. Fringe tidbit. Some villagers believed that improperly dried fish would attract yokai, specifically a mischief-loving one named Akanami, who licked unclean surfaces. Hanging charms or whispering apologies to your food while drying it was a precaution some took, just in case. Your wife hums a lullaby under her breath. Not for your daughter, who's very awake and trying to sneak a dried anchovy into her sleeve, but for the fish. Or maybe the ancestors. Or maybe the rhythm of the night itself. Outside, the sky turns plum-colored. You step out briefly to check the weather, scanning the horizon like you've done since you were old enough to balance on your father's shoulders. No storm, no fog. Just stars, stars, stars. Inside, the last fish is hung. The last pot of brine is sealed. And your daughter has finally admitted defeat, curling into your wife's lap and yawning so wide you can see tomorrow in her throat. Historians still argue whether these household tasks were considered gendered labor or shared survival. In remote coastal communities, necessity often blurred roles. Fathers taught sons to clean and cure. Mothers taught daughters to knot nets and gut eels. You learned from whoever would let you stand close without getting splashed. You carry the empty bowls to the washing trough, out back the one that leaks slightly on the left and is home to a frog you've named Supervisor. He blinks slowly as you arrive, offering no help whatsoever. You scrub. Not hurried, not lazy. Just enough. The water is cold and honest. The moon overhead watches you like a quiet boss who says nothing but notices everything. You rinse your hands, letting the fish oils run off your fingers and back into the earth. The plants nearby will benefit your grandmother. Always said a touch of sea made vegetables braver. You walk slowly back to the house, where your wife is laying your daughter on the futon, tucking her in with the precision of a woman who once bathed a cat without losing her dignity. She gives you a look, soft, satisfied, a little tired. You give one back, grateful, sea-stung, and exactly as tired. Together, you slide the last of the drying doors shut and sit outside on the wooden engawa. Your backs to the house, your faces to the sea. No need for words. The smoke still trails from the shed. The scent of fish and cedar clings to your sleeves. The stars are louder now, it seems. Or maybe everything else has gone quiet. You think of the fish hanging in the smokehouse, of how tomorrow they'll be stored, traded, packed in reed boxes and sent up the coast. Some will end up in merchant homes, others on rice bowls offered to spirits. And just a few will come back to this very house salted and sliced and shared with chopsticks and laughter. You shift slightly, letting your knee brush hers. She doesn't move away. You both listen to the fire crackling, to the waves, to the sound of your child snoring like a sleepy tanuki, and to the sea which never sleeps, but sometimes dreams. The village exhales. Evening has folded itself fully around the hamlet, like a worn futon patched in places still warm in all the right spots. You feel it in the way your shoulders drop just a little more, in the way the shadows finally stop shifting and settle into corners polite and unbothered. There's no rush now. You step off the engawa and begin your slow loop around the village, more ritual than chore. Others do the same. Neighbors walking without needing a destination. Old men sipping tea from chipped cups. Children half asleep on their mothers' backs, little hands clutching toy boats made from ginkgo leaves. Mainstream historical fact. In Edo period fishing villages, the evening was often the most social time. After labor-intensive days, villagers gathered to share meals, stories, and sak under lanterns. These communal moments helped reinforce the tight-knit nature of coastal communities. You pass the village's central fire pit, still glowing faintly from the fish smoking earlier, and find the usual suspects gathered on low stools, folding fans flapping like lazy butterflies. One of them waves you over with a familiar grin. We were just talking about the time you mistook a jellyfish for a scarf. I was 8, you remind him, sitting anyway. You were screaming like you were 30. You nod solemnly. I was an advanced screamer. Laughter bubbles around the circle. Someone passes you a small cup of sake, warm from being tucked in a sleeve. You sip slowly, letting the heat crawl down your throat like a firefly with manners. This is the kind of gathering that makes time forget itself. Stories begin and end in different places. Voices rise and fall like waves, laughter looping back on itself. No one speaks of storms, or hunger, or the nets that didn't come back whole. Tonight, it's about eels as long as your arm ghosts in tide pools, and the woman who once caught a carp using only a hairpin and sheer vengeance. Fringe tidbit. There are records of Edo period women who gained minor fame in fishing communities for their unorthodox methods. One supposedly used her voice alone to lure sardines into shallow traps, claiming they responded to lullabies. You remember something your grandfather used to say during these evenings. The sea doesn't just give fish, it gives stories. And the stories last longer. He was right. You tell one now about the first time you rode solo at dawn, your hands blistering and your heart racing only to catch a boot. The laughter that erupts is worth the shame. Historians still argue whether these storytelling sessions were merely entertainment or if they held deeper cultural roles like reinforcing local myths, preserving techniques, or gently correcting younger generations. You suspect it was all three, a soft way of saying this is who we are. Don't forget, someone begins to sing, not a performance. Just an old tune rising from an old throat, the words fuzzy at the edges like sea glass. Others hum along, and soon the air vibrates with harmony and memory. You don't know every word, but your hands find the beat against your knees. The rhythm of home. The song fades. Silence drapes over the circle like a shared blanket. A breeze stirs the lanterns. You rise, nod thanks, and continue your loop. Past the well where someone left a pail mid-draw. Past the laundry line now, ghost-like, in the dark shirts swaying like they've got secrets to whisper. Past the boat shed where a cat stretches atop a half-built hull, claiming it as her throne. And then home. Your wife has already lit the oil lamp in the main room. Your daughter sleeps soundly, a blanket kicked half off, a fish charm clutched in her small hand. You slip inside, wash your face in the basin, and change into your sleeping yukata. The tatami is cool under your feet. The lamp flickers. You lie down next to your wife, and for a few moments, you just listen. To the creak of bamboo outside, to the hiss of a dying ember, to the gentle rhythm of her breath. This, you think, is what evening means. Not an ending, but a turning inward, from sea to land, from story to silence, from effort to rest. You pull the blanket over both of you and exhale, the kind of exhale that carries the whole day in it, folds it up like a map, and tucks it into the drawer of memory. And as your eyes begin to close, a final image flickers in your mind. The nets hanging in the shed, the fish swinging gently like wind chimes, and the sea out there in the dark, not sleeping, but satisfied. For now, sleep doesn't come instantly. You lie there still and listening, letting your thoughts drift the way boats do when no one's holding the oars. It's the in-between hour when the lanterns are dimmed, but the fire's not out, when the village is quiet, but not yet dreaming. Your wife stirs, once rolls away, then settles. The child mumbles something about sea cucumbers. You stifle a laugh. But you don't sleep yet. Not because you're not tired, you are, but because the mind plays its old games. It begins whispering questions it's saved up all day. What if the wind turns? What if the ropes fray? What if tomorrow the sea offers nothing? You've known all kinds of dreams, some shaped like waves, some like fish too large to catch, others like voices calling from beneath the tide. But the ones that stay with you are always the quietest ones. Not nightmares, not fantasies, just echoes. Mainstream historical fact. Edo period fishermen often passed down stories about dreams that foretold fish migrations, storms, or omens. Some kept dream diaries. Others offered small tokens at shrines if the visions disturbed them. Tonight's dream doesn't come all at once. It eases in. First, you're rowing. The oars are heavy, but the water parts with that familiar resistance, like pushing through long grass soaked in rain. The fog is so thick it curls inside your sleeves. You can't see your own knees. Then shapes begin to move beneath you. Not fish, not quite. Something older, slower. Their scales glint with moonlight that doesn't belong to this moon. And though you're alone in the boat, you're not alone in the dream. A voice calls from the fog, not alarming, not urgent, just present. You don't answer, you listen. Fringe tidbit. One coastal folktale warns that answering a voice from sea fog invites the attention of funa-yurei, restless boat spirits that guide or mislead depending on their mood. Some fishermen countered this by placing pine needles in their ears before sleeping near water. The boat stops, just stops. No rocks, no anchor, just a sense that it's time to wait. You drift, the fog lifts, you're surrounded by silence. Then you wake. Slowly, reluctantly. The room is unchanged. Your wife breathes steadily. Your child has managed to kick the blanket all the way across the floor. You retrieve it, careful not to wake her. You sit for a while on the edge of the futon, feet resting on the tatami, eyes tracing the lines in the ceiling. That dream will stay with you. Not for what it said, but for what it didn't. Historians still argue whether dreams in Edo period fishing communities were taken literally or as poetic metaphors. But evidence suggests many treated them seriously, sometimes even letting a dream guide the day's decision on where to sail. You stand and slide open the door just a crack. The outside world hasn't shifted much. Stars still scattered, wind still soft. Somewhere a dog barks, once then reconsiders. You step outside. The air is cooler now, like the sea exhaling across the whole village. You pull your robe tighter and make your way to the shoreline where the boats sleep. Nose down keels nestled in sand like turtles waiting for sun. You run a hand along the side of your own vessel, smooth in places, chipped in others. She's not new, but she's yours. The wood knows your weight. The rope remembers your pull. If she could talk, she'd probably insult your rowing technique. You smile at the thought. You glance toward the horizon. Nothing yet. But you know the sea. You know it's always turning, even when it pretends to rest. You return inside. The tatami greets your footsteps like an old friend. Hush, hush, hush. You lie back down. Not to sleep again, at least not yet, but just to rest. To wait for the sky to hint at morning. There's comfort in the slowness. The knowledge that nothing must happen now. That you have done your part today, hauled, mended, smoked, shared, salted, prayed, and told stories that made the lantern sway with laughter. Tomorrow the rhythm begins again. You awake before the sun. Check the nets. Listen to the waves. Pray to gods who never answer, but always receive. You will make peace with the sea, or try to, because this life, your life, is not about mastery. It's about rhythm. Tied in, tied out, catch, cure, cast again. And in the in-between, in these moments of cool air and slow thoughts, you are reminded that nothing grand needs to happen tonight. You just need to be here, alive, listening, ready. The faintest blue begins to seep into the sky. It starts low just above the sea's edge, where the horizon has always kept its secrets. That shy, almost bruised tint that means night is easing out. Not gone, not defeated, just gently retreating. You lie on your futon, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, but seeing something far beyond it. The day is about to begin. But before it does, there's a stillness. A breath the world seems to take before it starts its endless list of demands again. You rise without waking your wife. Her breathing is deep, peaceful. Your daughter has rolled herself into a small cocoon, feet sticking out, like she's forgotten how blankets work. You smile and pull the covers back over her, tucking the corners in just right the way your mother once did for you. The house creaks softly as you move. You splash water on your face at the basin, cool, almost biting. It pulls you fully into the present, out of dream, out of thought. The smell of the sea arrives a second later, drifting in through the open window, wrapped in seaweed and salt and promise. Mainstream historical fact. In Edo period Japan, fishermen often rose before first light to take advantage of tides and fish activity. Morning rituals were quiet, but deliberate prayer preparation and observation of wind and water conditions were common. You dress quickly, tying your sash with practiced fingers. Everything is where it should be your gear. In its usual place, the rope neatly coiled, the spare net folded and dry. Even the sandals by the door sit just so, as if they've waited patiently all night. Stepping outside, the world feels held, like the village is suspended in a pause, waiting for the tide to signal the next move. A neighbor passes nodding. No words, just the silent camaraderie of early risers. The boats are ready. You push yours into the surf, the wood groaning softly in its joints. The tide licks at your feet like a sleepy pet. The cold bites, but not cruelly. Just a reminder, this isn't your world. You're only borrowing it. You row past the breakwater, past the kelp beds, past the shallows where crabs scribble runes in the sand. You reach the deeper water. And there, finally, the sun crests. Not dramatically, just enough. Light spreads over the surface like oil, slow and golden. You exhale through your nose. Not quite a sigh, not quite a prayer. Just release. You check your lines, cast your net, and wait. Historians still argue whether the tools of Edo period fishermen were more influenced by Chinese designs or native innovations, especially the kakeyami method of cast netting. Regardless, the techniques were passed down orally, refined over lifetimes, and often named with affectionate nicknames. Your own net, for example, is called Old Lady because she complains, but delivers. Time stretches out on the open water. You think back on everything, how many mornings like this have come and gone. How the same motions never feel quite the same. How the sea is never ever bored. Fringe tidbit. There were whispered tales among coastal elders that some fishermen could smell the fish before casting, an inherited trait they claimed. Others used patterns of gulls or floating seaweed as intuitive signs. The ocean, they said, always gives clues if you know how to listen. You haul the net back in. It's not empty, it's not full, but it's enough. You grin and mutter, "Thanks, old lady." The net groans because of course it does. As the boat drifts, you let your fingers trail through the water. It's colder now that the sun is rising, or maybe you're just more awake. You squint back toward the coast. The village is still small from here, but the smoke from breakfast fires has started to climb, curling skyward in soft columns. You're not in a hurry to return. Not yet. You sit a while longer, watching, thinking, drifting. Just a man and a boat and a sea that doesn't need to be tamed. Eventually, you turn the boat around. The nets lie beside you, heavy with the morning's work. Your shoulders ache in familiar places. The sun is higher now, touching the tips of the hills beyond the village. You row in silence, letting the oars creak their own song. The shoreline grows. Voices drift out, distant calls, laughter, the clack of wood on wood. You beach the boat and pull it ashore. Another neighbor helps without being asked. You nod. He nods back. That's enough. Home waits. Smokehouse, breakfast, sack bowls drying on the sill. Your daughter's voice calling something about seashells. Your wife standing in the doorway, arms, crossed smile tucked into the corner of her mouth like she's saving it for later. And you're ready. Not because you've conquered the day, but because you've greeted it. And now, it greets you back. So now, as the sun climbs higher and the nets lie still, you return once more to the quiet part of the day, the after part. The part where the work is done, the sea is thanked, and the world doesn't ask anything more of you than to sit, to breathe, and to be. You settle on the Ngawa again, feet bare, cup of tea in hand. Steam curls slowly toward the sky, as if even the heat has nowhere better to be. Birds chirp, wood creaks, and far off the waves hush against the shore with the rhythm of something ancient and kind. Your daughter laughs from the garden, chasing something invisible. Your wife hums as she sorts the catch. The sky is soft now, no longer sharp with morning, but gentle and wide and unbothered. This life, your life, isn't loud. It isn't carved into monuments or sung in great epics. But it's steady, salted, smoked, shared. And that perhaps is all the story you ever needed. So close your eyes now. Let the boat rock. Let the sea hush. Let the dreams come like tides, softly, quietly, always returning. Sweet dreams.